It's my pleasure to introduce our panelists this morning. First, Barry Duval, head of the Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the leading voice of business in the Commonwealth. Barry and I first met back in the 90s when he headed up the Hampton Roads Partnership. He had just finished up his service after having been elected as the youngest mayor of a major city in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the city of Newport News. He's a former Secretary of Commerce and Trade for the Commonwealth, as well as a former consultant in economic development, and he remembers Liz Villa from about 20 years ago when Barry and this gentleman named Doug Smith came up and did a master plan for the Gateway property, which is now being realized somewhat like they envisioned it would be 20 years ago. No fine wine before it's done. Another good friend of mine is Jason Koubi. Jason is the number 2 person at the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. He was reunited with Stephen Murray, who he's worked with in the state of Louisiana. Jason's got a very distinguished background himself, including Chamber of Commerce work, regionalism, and state economic development experience. So 2 very qualified and capable individuals to hopefully enlighten us today on the business community's role in economic development and the state's role in economic development. And I've got a series of questions. I'm going to sort of prompt these 2 gentlemen and let them free flow as they will. And I'm going to start with Barry. Barry, if you could share with us a little bit about the Chamber's role in economic development, the role of the business community in economic development, and maybe a little bit about Blueprint Virginia.
Okay. Thank you, Patrick, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I want to thank you for inviting me. I'm honored to be here and look forward to the discussion. I asked Patrick how long we were going to be here. He said I could stay as long as I wanted, but you were all leaving at 9:30. So I'm going to be mindful of our length of our comments so we can cover as much material as possible. I would tell you the role of the business community is essential. One of the questions I like to ask CEOs is who's in charge of Virginia's economic future? And if you're sitting one-on-one with somebody and you ask them that question, you get a variety of answers. If you ask the CEO who's in charge of Virginia's economic future, they'll say, well, the General Assembly's in charge of their economic future. And I'll say they're a very important part of the future. They are, in fact, the ones that are going to vote on incentives. They're going to vote on education and transportation. They're going to play an important role. But they meet 60 days one year and 45 days the next. The other answer I get is that the governor's in charge of Virginia's economic future. And I say, well, the governor is certainly our chief salesperson. They represent the Commonwealth of Virginia around the world. They certainly are important on the incentive negotiation process. They're the voice of the Commonwealth. We're the only state in the nation that doesn't allow a governor to run for re-election. So we can't reward them, nor can we hold them accountable. So we have a 48-month term governor. And if any of you are in business, you want to be in business longer than 48 months. I would say to you, and the answer I try to get them to recognize, is that the economic future of the Commonwealth should have the fingerprints of the business community. The business community should be involved in the economic future of the Commonwealth. And I think regionally, the business community should be involved in the future of the region's economic growth. I'm excited to be here this morning. I think the role of the business community is very important, and I'm encouraged to see both elected officials at the local level, and I'm encouraged to see the business community meeting together, talking about the future of the region, because regions grow and prosper along economic boundaries. I could share a little bit more later about Blueprint Virginia and why we developed the blueprint and how we present it to the incoming governor. But essentially, it's a 2-year process that focuses on 9 competitive areas of economic development that in fact presents to the incoming governor the long-term strategic plan for the Commonwealth from a business perspective. We have 94 different organizations involved in developing it, 6,000 people actually participating, and it is a long-term strategic plan. So our current blueprint It's called Blueprint Virginia 2025, because we want to think about what Virginia is going to look like in the year 2025, which is at least a 2-year governor's term. So thanks for the question, and thank you all for being here and allowing me to be part of this program.
Thank you, Barry. Jason, there have been a lot of changes at the Virginia Economic Development Partnership in the last couple of years. I know one of your focus areas is improving Virginia's rankings. When I first came to the Commonwealth, we were routinely ranked the top state for business in the country, and we've fallen a little bit since then. So can you share a little bit with us about some of the changes at VEDP and your focus on those rankings?
Well, great question, Patrick. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. Great to be back in Prince William County. Great to be back at the Chamber. Debbie, great to see you and your team. A lot of exciting changes at VEDP. I think most of you know that Virginia Economic Development Partnership is the economic development authority of the Commonwealth. And we work every day in collaboration with partners like Patrick and others to advance that mission. In 2017, VEDP brought in some new leadership. Stephen Moray, my boss as CEO, that's when I joined VEDP. We were tremendously excited to work with leaders across Virginia to chart the kind of economic future that Barry was just describing. There were also a long list of things that we needed to take care of. You guys are probably familiar with the JLARC audit that came out shortly before our arrival. But I think probably the single biggest thing we did in terms of sort of what's new at VEDP is we spent a lot of time digging deep, understanding where we had come from, where we are, and most importantly, where we want to go to create a healthier, more inclusive, more exciting economic future for all of the Commonwealth. We did that in a very collaborative way. We spent there were hundreds of meetings, thousands of people engaged in this process. It was at once a deeply analytical exercise to really understand what was driving Virginia's economy, what was holding us back, what were the opportunities that we could capture in the future in terms of new business investment and job creation. But it was also an exercise of really understanding what the aspirations were of the different communities that make up our Commonwealth. Where do we want to go? And so that was a year-long process that led us to a strategic plan that outlines a number of transformational goals for the Commonwealth, along with specific initiatives to achieve those things. I'll just briefly touch on those. The first one is to reposition the Commonwealth as a leading state for job growth. And what it's going to take to get there is many of the important public policy improvements that we're working on with Barry and chambers across the Commonwealth to make us more competitive. It's also going to involve VEDP doing a great job working with our partners to secure that growth in the sectors that we're cultivating. So getting back to number one in economic growth. But we want to do that in a way also, and this is our second goal, that every region of the Commonwealth participates in. We want to make sure, it doesn't mean that that every region in the state is going to grow as fast as Northern Virginia, but we need to make sure that as we position the Commonwealth overall for growth, that we do that in a way where we do everything that's possible to make sure that every region of the Commonwealth is in at least positive territory. We don't want to be the best state for jobs. We don't want to be the best state for business if that means that large portions of the Commonwealth are in decline. It just wouldn't feel good. So we want to do it in a way that every region can participate. Our third transformational goal is what Patrick touched on, and that is reclaiming Virginia's leadership position in national business climate rankings. That's something that VEDP is working extraordinarily closely on with Barry Duval and his team at the Virginia Chamber, along with other partners in the business community. And there's really sort of three ingredients to claiming that title again. So you guys will recall that not very long ago, back about 10 years ago, Virginia was regularly ranked among the leading states for business in America based on business climate surveys and so forth. We fell steadily in the wake of sequestration, in the wake of the national economic recession. We've started to creep back up, but we're not there yet. There's three things that we need to do to get there. One is that we need to improve our economic performance overall. Two, we need to make some of the competitiveness improvements in our fundamentals that we're going to get into today. And then thirdly, we need to improve the perception of Virginia among business leaders nationally and among site selection consultants. Part of that is just, doing the things that we need to do, but part of it is telling the story of our progress through marketing, and that's something that we can spend some time talking about today too.
Thank you, Jason. I'm going to stay with you for a second. Tell us what you think Virginia is doing right, and where you think we need to put some of our focus.
Well, first of all, I would say that Virginia has a long legacy of doing great things in terms of positioning itself for economic success. One of the things that just so impressed me about Virginia is sort of the legacy, the platform of good public policy, a business community, an elected leadership in the governor's office and administration and the General Assembly that is committed to maintaining that and to building upon that. And you look across Virginia and you see a workforce that is extraordinarily well educated, great public schools, great universities, great infrastructure, a great overall image for business. There's just a lot to celebrate. But in terms of some of the things that we need to do to take that to the next level, there are some things that we need to do just to improve our fundamental economic competitiveness. Some of those things include understanding and then investing strategically in site development across the Commonwealth. One of the most common reasons that we lose, in fact, the most common reason we lose a competitive economic development project when we're in the game is that we just don't have a site of sufficient quality and sufficient readiness to win the project. That is the most common reason, and it's totally addressable, but it's going to take some resources to accomplish that. Another thing is particularly in an environment where you have very low unemployment rates, where businesses are trying to find talent and competing aggressively for talent. That has raised the urgency of providing a workforce solution when a company needs to expand in Virginia. We've got so many great companies. 2/3 of our projects are expansion projects. So, and also, of course, when a company is looking to locate in Virginia for the first time, if we're the state that can provide the best workforce solution, we are going to dramatically improve our win percentage. And so a big thing that we're working on right now with the support of the administration and the governor, with the support of the General Assembly, is we're building a custom workforce development program that will provide a very compelling, comprehensive, customized solution when a business is looking to do a large job creation, economic development project. And I'd love to talk more about that program if we have time. As we do those things, we've also got to do a better job of telling the story. One of the things that I'm impressed with is when I talk to site selection consultants and business decision makers, is they tell me, we like Virginia, it's an awesome state, we know that it's beautiful and it's good, but we haven't heard as much from you guys over the last 10 years about what's going on as we have in some other places. And there's a reason for that. And that is for most of the last 10 years, Virginia at the state level has not spent very much money marketing itself as a business environment. We've done a great job on tourism. But for every other sector that drives Virginia's economy, we've sort of turned that spigot on. And thanks to some great advocacy from the business community, thanks to some support from the elected officials, we're starting to turn that around. And so we've got the resources to begin to tell Virginia's story again. That's really going to help us in the rankings, and it's also going to bring more business to the Commonwealth.
Thank you. So The role of the business community in economic development and in our individual communities vary. Nationally, there's not always a good feeling about businesses. There's issues with right to work, minimum wage, things like that. So can you share with us what you think the business community's leadership role is? And I know you touched on that a little bit, but how do you get the business community engaged and involved?
I want to champion some of the points that Jason made from this perspective. If any region is going to grow and prosper, they have to have the elements he discussed. The connectedness to the outside world. Each region in Virginia has its own unique connectedness, whether it's air transportation or information highway, and broadband is so important. Some of the regions in southern and southwest Virginia are challenged by connectedness. Highway infrastructure, air infrastructure, connectedness is critical. He mentioned a competent workforce, and that is so important to deliver the service as well as the products that you want to develop and manufacture. The third element is the intellectual capacity to compete. There's no region in America growing and prospering without a higher education institution that's strong and vibrant and supported. The fourth element is you have to have this spirit of entrepreneurship. And this entrepreneurship spirit has to be fostered, it has to be grown, it has to be encouraged. And then I think finally, and this gets to the answer to your question, is you have to have pro-business public policies. You have to have them at the local level, and you have to have them at the state level. And what are pro-business policies and who sets them? Well, it's the elected officials. And I use the term recovering politician. I was an earlier politician in my lifetime. I was 28 years old when I was on city council, and I served as mayor for 6 years, from age 30 to 36. And I remember the largest employer telling me when I was first elected that they were going to let go 10,000 people in the next 6 years. It was Newport Shipbuilding. They had 30,000 employees at the time. I remember thinking I would certainly be a one-term mayor. That was my first thought. And I'm a single person, I'm elected by the citizens, but I really couldn't see how we were going to transform the city or the region with elected officials. So I went to the business community, and I said, we need a long-term plan to move from Department of Defense spending to non-Department of Defense spending. We need to figure out how to diversify our economy. We need to figure out how to work together as a region across city and county lines. So we formed a regional economic group. We started hearing from the business community, and the business community provided leadership, and they're the ones that provided direction, and we as elected officials helped to implement those public policies. I remember flying through Charlotte about 25 years ago and being so impressed with the infrastructure of Charlotte. When I got back to my office, I wrote the city manager and commended the city manager for the great airport in Charlotte and how it transformed that region. And he actually wrote back, this is in the days when you wrote letters, Jason, you're younger than I am. And I got a letter back, and the letter said, I appreciate you commending the city council in Charlotte, but it was the business community around Charlotte that decided it was going to have a hub, and they were going to invest in it, and they elected the right people that protected and invested in the public infrastructure in order to build an airport, but it was the vision of the business community. And I will tell you that story is true in each major metropolitan area. It was the business community that had the vision. It was the business community that came together with the vision. And they did it in a way that they then got behind elected officials that would support a proactive vision. And so what does it mean here to your community, and what does it mean to the Commonwealth? While we at the State Chamber endorse ideas, we don't endorse candidates. We're not the U.S. Chamber, we're not the local or regional chamber. We endorse ideas, and these blueprint ideas are all focused on economic development and growth and empowering elected officials to invest in the things we just talked about. But without the business community's leadership, you're going to see an erosion of the business climate in Virginia. I'll mention a couple of legislative matters if I can now, Patrick, if you'd like. We had some great successes in the General Assembly, and we consider those things to brag about, but we also had to play defense. Some of our successes were the expansion of Amazon's incentive program and Micron right here in your county incentive program, and incentive funds for more degrees in science and technology for universities, a number of initiatives around workforce. We had a lot of successes, but we also had to defend our Commonwealth. We had to defend the right to work law. The right to work law is, we've been the northernmost right to work state for 60 years. And that brings business and industry to Virginia. We had to defend many other different principles that were put forward by members of the General Assembly that aren't business friendly. And those non-business friendly members of the General Assembly actually are going to cause our business climate to go in the opposite direction. You've heard of the Green New Deal politically nationally. There was a Green New Deal put forward in the General Assembly, and that was to require that 80% of electricity for Virginia would come from renewables by the year 2027. And I would say we're all for energy diversity. We believe in renewables, but to mandate that 80% be generated from renewables by 2027, our economists tell us that that would cost about $9 billion annually per household, $3,900 a year, over $300 a month increase for your household electricity and power if we mandated that. So we want technology to grow so those renewables can become affordable. We want to go towards those things, but as a voice of Virginia business statewide, and as the chamber is the voice of your county, you have to speak to elected officials about what's important. And that's important. Right to work is critical. If we didn't have the right to work in Virginia, it would cost us about $1.3 billion a year. And I would tell you that we would lose expansions, we would lose relocations, we would lose in the economic competitive world, and it would cost the Commonwealth its opportunities for growth and prosperity. So the fifth element, public policy. Who enacts public policy? Elected officials at the local level and state officials in the General Assembly. We've been fortunate to have pro-business Democratic and Republican governors. Virginia's been blessed with pro-business Republican and Democratic governors. We need to make sure it stays that way, and we need to elect people to the General Assembly that support business principles. So I would encourage you to be involved in politics to the extent that candidates express their support for right to work, express their support for all of the above energy policies, express their support for customized workforce training programs, which is going to need investment to keep businesses here. Support those candidates because they're going to create a brighter future for your region and the Commonwealth. Sorry for the long answer.
I'm going to give the mic right back to you, Barry. Both of you have mentioned incentives. The Amazon project being a perfect example of what New York did to them versus what Virginia did. But even in Virginia, it was not without controversy. I think the Micron project went through a little more easily, but that was a huge package as well. So if both of you could talk about the policies behind incentives, the need for incentives, and maybe some of the public philosophy.
I think, first of all, I want to recognize VEDP. Jason won't tell you this, you may not have seen news media, but I will say to you there are over 15,000 economic development organizations in America. Every state has one as well. Just a month ago, the #1 economic development agency in America for any state is the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. So let's give VEDP. That Jason and Stephen Murray have brought to the state economic development has been transformational. They have brought vision, ethics, commitment, communication, partnership, back in the name, VEDP, and it's truly been a blessing for our Commonwealth to have Jason and Stephen's leadership along with the team they've built. And I don't believe we would have received the award for the Amazon's second headquarters without the leadership, and it's economic development is a team sport, but VEDP and its leadership played a key role. I was fortunate to have some early conversations about incentive structures, and let me focus the rest of my comments on incentives. As Stephen and I and others were talking about, how do you attract a company like this, when 200 other regions are going to be competing for this headquarters? What did this company need more than anything else for its future prosperity? It needs a workforce. It needs a workforce. So I think you'll find, and I'm going to have Jason go through some of the incentives specifically, but the workforce opportunity in Northern Virginia, the investment the Commonwealth is making in the workforce and the workforce pipeline is not just going to serve Amazon, it's going to serve every region up here. I saw Josh Levy earlier. He is doing a great job working with the Northern Virginia Tech Council. And I will tell you that all of Josh's members, over 1,000, I'm sure, Josh, are going to have an opportunity to benefit from increased workforce training through the investments that are being made in and as a result of Amazon looking to come to Virginia. It's going to help all of my members. We have 26,000 members across the Commonwealth. We're the largest business organization in the state. And I speak across the Commonwealth about the features and benefits of Amazon in their region. All these higher education institutions will have an opportunity to produce more degrees in science and technology. And the collaboration in Virginia has made a difference. So I would say we structure our incentives first where they're needed the most, and second with a return on investment analysis that's really well defined and supported by the members of the General Assembly and the governor. And there's a process for that, Republicans and Democrats, and a committee that actually review those incentives. And the incentives we structure will be paid back based upon performance. This is another important feature of Virginia. We don't write the check until the performance has been achieved. So we receive the revenues and then provide the check back. And the opportunity for us to continue to manage incentives responsibly, because it's a world in which economic development lives in, is one that we want to defend and support. And I think Virginia's doing it as responsibly as any other organization with taxpayer dollars. And that's ensuring that the money paid into a company is paid back within a 3 to 5 year window, and everything else is upside. So the Amazon deal, Micron expansion, we're grateful for those of you who know the Micron company here, for them continuing to have confidence in our region. That's happening across the Commonwealth. And just remember, over 80% of our job growth is going to come from people in this room. It's going to come from you expanding and you growing your businesses. So we want to make sure we're providing you the right incentives as well. Let me ask Jason to talk a little bit more about the incentive structures.
Well, Barry, that was a really terrific overview, so I'll try to just touch on a few things that I can add here. One important point when you think about incentives is to just always keep in mind that incentives are most important and really ought to be used in situations where places are, your area is roughly on the same sort of playing field as another place that is in sort of competition. So I make that point because if you're not investing in the fundamentals, if you're not investing in education, workforce, infrastructure, if you don't have a reasonable tax and regulatory climate, all of the things that create a fundamental environment for success, then you're just not going to be in the game. You don't want to be in the business of just buying projects. And so when I talk to site selection consultants, the folks who advise approximately 50% of the larger competitive economic development projects in the United States, what they tell us is that Virginia is known for a lot of good things. It's also known for being a somewhat middling state for incentives. We've been relatively modest, and I see that anecdotally in my work. I know that we frequently will lose a project because another state made a more aggressive incentive offer. There's some data to back this up, so for those of you who'd like to see this later, I've got a chart, and what it shows is Virginia in comparison to other states, and Virginia, based on historical data, tends to offer about, so we're offering sort of basically, the other states on average are offering approximately 5 times what we are per job. 5 times what Virginia offers per job, and approximately 5 times the incentive value for each dollar of CapEx as well, of capital expenditure. So the data backs that up. Where Virginia has shown a willingness to compete more substantially with incentives has been especially true on some of these larger transformative projects. The Micron project here in your neighborhood, the Amazon project, where we are, I think, I'll say struggling because there's so many advantages here, but where we have room for improvement is in the discretionary incentives that are commonly available for business expansion and for new business location. And there's 2 in particular that I believe are particularly important, that are particularly common in places where you see a lot of new manufacturing investment in particular. One is that many states in our region regularly offer some form of a tax credit that is based on new job creation or new payroll creation in competitive sectors, particularly in manufacturing, during the first few years of operation of an expanded manufacturer or of a new manufacturer. So basically a per job or per payroll tax credit or rebate. That is very commonly offered by states in the Southeast. The other one is many states have some mechanism that will abate essentially the property taxes, or in Virginia's case, the M&T taxes on new manufacturing investment. So, the state that I previously worked in basically exempted new manufacturing investment from property taxes during the first 10 years of operation. After that, it was 100%, and as the manufacturing sector built up, it made for a very strong revenue source for local government. Virginia doesn't really have a clean mechanism for abating M&T taxes on manufacturing. And as a result of that, for existing manufacturers, we are a relatively competitive state when you look at the total cost of taxes and incentives. An existing manufacturer means one that's been in business for 10 years or more. For a new manufacturer, whether that is a new location in the state or an expansion, Virginia is one of the highest cost states in terms of total tax and incentives, and that holds us back from additional manufacturing investment. So, it gets kind of nuanced. We're seeing some improvements there, but it's definitely a place where we can make up some ground in a targeted way.
Barry, you touched on regions as an economic unit. I want to ask both of you to talk a little bit about regionalism. Having come up from Hampton Roads, I'm amazed and was amazed while I was down there. This is the only region in the Commonwealth that doesn't function as a regional economic unit from an economic development standpoint. There's no regional group up here. So can you talk a little bit about the advantages of that, what you've seen in some other areas, and what we might do as a region maybe to advance that cause?
So Patrick was talking about Hampton Roads, 10 cities and 5 counties, all bumping up next to each other, 1.6 million people. So think about 10 mayors, 10 city managers, 5 county chairs, all sharing the same infrastructure. I always said when I grew up there, I wanted to know what we would be when I grew up. I'm still a resident of Hampton Roads. I have a home in Richmond as well. This area actually has some advantages in terms of its size and its scope. The capital region itself, though, will grow and prosper as the economy here grows and prospers, and the capital region will fall away together. There's no getting around the elements of economic development. It occurs along economic boundaries and not political boundaries. So thinking broadly about economic development, what improves the growth of the capital region, and that would include all of Northern Virginia, probably from Fredericksburg or some portion of Fredericksburg North. What will improve the economic climate is investments in transportation. There's no question there's more to do in Northern Virginia, and I'm hoping that we can ultimately address some of our economic development issues in the Commonwealth by moving towards tax reform. I think it's important for Virginia to move away from this agrarian tax approach. Jason was kind. Our manufacturing M&T puts us 49th out of 50 states. That's the actual number. So if you're a manufacturer and you can go to South Carolina and build airplanes, for new manufacturers, to expand Purdue, we don't have a lot of large new manufacturers coming because we're challenged with sites and we're challenged with our M&T tax. So we need to do tax reform in Virginia. That would help us dramatically. We need to invest in transportation. That would help us dramatically. And we need to hold on to the people who are finishing high school and finishing college in this region. And I think a collaborative effort around work-based learning, internships, apprenticeship programs, connecting our students to our work community is the next level for us as a Commonwealth, and I think for this region. So we can actually hold on to the college graduates and make sure people recognize that there are alternatives to four-year degrees, two-year certifications, apprenticeship programs that provide a significant lifestyle, income, and quality of life, and work on those programs. But I think regionally, the Capital Region will grow and prosper together. So I would encourage regional thinking by the Board of Supervisors with those who are in Northern Virginia, talking to your delegation about the regional issues here that you're facing, and get them to think along the lines of competitive issues for the region and supporting a regional legislative package that the whole region will grow and prosper. That's what we're encouraging through the Growth and Opportunity Virginia, the Go Virginia program you may have heard about. It is more transformational for Southwest and Southern Virginia than it is for Northern Virginia, but it's getting cities and counties to think across municipal lines as an economic region and working on those things that we all have in common, recognizing you're going to have your own opportunities within your political boundaries.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple things. I do want to just say one more thing about this. I know I don't want to spend too much time on it, but this M&T thing for manufacturing, I'm confident, I know there's some local officials in the audience. There's a way to do this without damaging the revenue stream for local governments. I know that's important. So, don't think that just because we're saying we need to somehow mitigate it, that means that it's going to, blow a hole in the budget, so to speak. So there's ways to do this. So on regionalism, extraordinarily important. You know the adage about how businesses don't think about county lines, so to speak. It's totally true, but I think in Northern Virginia's case, there's so much momentum in Northern Virginia, and as Patrick and I have talked about, this is when you look at the totality of Northern Virginia, the assets that it has, the scale of it, the diversity of it. This is a place that could accommodate almost any kind of business investment. Size, industry, what have you. I mean, it is a world-class region with world-class connectivity, world-class talent, world-class scale. And when you think about just the diversity of the economic landscape, from urban to suburban to rural, you could accommodate almost anything here. And there's a lot of folks around the world who have picked up that there is something special here in Northern Virginia, but we're not really telling that story sufficiently as a Northern Virginia story. We really need to think about the value of marketing Northern Virginia in its totality, and to have the collective resources across Northern Virginia behind that message in a single point of contact, if you will, for sort of aggregating opportunity and making sure that it is addressed in a comprehensive, strategic way. I think that is a huge opportunity. And if I were to sort of say, okay, what are some of the things we could do to really take Northern Virginia to the next level, make sure that you had a more sort of coordinated, longer-term economic development strategy and vision, that would be a big one. So for those who want to explore and support regionalism, I personally endorse it, and really hope that that conversation moves along.
I think we're getting ready to wrap up, but if each of you could maybe tell us, and you've touched on it, but highlight, maybe summarize 2 or 3 things that as a region, specifically I'm referring to Prince William, Manassas Park, sort of that micro region within the larger region, your audience. What are those 2 or 3 things that we could do that would make us more competitive?
I've mentioned a couple of these things before, but I do think, one, playing your part in the regional ecosystem and thinking about how to, just create the right design for this region. I think that's something that Patrick and I have talked a lot about, and I think that's part. Also, when you think about Northern Virginia and Prince William County, business investments that require a lot of land. This is one of the places that can really offer that. I mean, there's a lot of other opportunities here as well, but to me, investment in sites and buildings so that you have a compelling, ready platform, a landing pad, if you will, for business investment. That's a huge thing. I mean, lastly, I would just echo some of the points that Barry made earlier about making sure that you're doing the things locally to provide a welcoming, competitive environment for the growth of your existing businesses as well as for other folks that would like to come here to help grow the economy.
And I'll just add to what Jason said. I think everything he said is critical. The Chamber is a tremendous organization in every community, and the opportunity to bring people together like you have in this room today and to think about what you want to be in 8 years and where you want this region to be in 8 years. And then have an informed strategic vision. I was doing some reading about Prince William County and talking to Supervisor Anderson, and I said, is this community really united on what it wants to be in 8 years? Is it really united on economic growth? I've seen communities like this reach a tipping point around the city of Williamsburg, James City County, where 50% of the region wants to not let anyone else in the county and 50% wants to grow the county. I mean, I've seen that happen in other counties. It's the last one in locks the door. So it is something I think the business community should have a view on and a united view on. So I would encourage you to continue to provide Patrick the leadership, and I want to commend you, Patrick, and Debbie, and everyone on the Chamber team for being a place where people come together, public and private, work together in a way that I think is among the best in the state. And I think you have one question. I want to say that your professional staff do a great job, but those of you in this room, do not underestimate. This is your chamber, and it is your future, and it is your opportunity to shape the future of your county. And so speak with one voice, and speak with one voice about what you see in the future, and what you want to have developed, and come up with a strategy and encourage pro-business people to seek local office and support them when they do, and support them when they run for state office, because you all will grow and prosper together, or you won't, based upon the fifth element, which is pro-business policies from your local officials and pro-business policies from your state officials. And frankly, I think you all have a tremendous amount of momentum here. And I want to thank you for having me and Jason and for allowing us to be part of your growth. If we can help you, I know we stand ready to do so. So thank you.